this advanced country, one of the top 7 countries, you have many ways to make some transformative changes. China and United States have taken such a bold initiative. And European Union, 28 countries have shown solidarity and unity. Therefore, it is only natural that Canada, as one of the G7 countries, should take a leadership role.
Wow, Canada, land of evil and darkness. Yes, Ban Ki-moon, Secretary General of the United Nations, thinks we're not, pulling our weight in the fight against climate change. And the CBC, of course, is eating all of this up. Now, this is the United Nations that invites Iran to judge women's rights, and the CBC that employed Jan Ghomeshi for so many years. Joining us from Victoria to discuss is academic and author Tim Ball. Is any of this criticism in any way fair?
No, absolutely not, Michael. And what Ban Ki-moon, of course, is doing, he is effectively a world politician. And as leader of the UN, of course, he has to have a political agenda, something to get people scared and therefore to listen to what he's saying. It's like H.L. Mencken's old comment about the whole aim of practical politics is to keep the populace alarmed and hence clamorous to be led to safety by menacing it with an endless series of hobgoblins, all of them imaginary. And of course the IPCC, the global warming issue, is exactly that. And then, of course, the other comment that Mencken made where the urge to save humanity is almost always a false front for the urge to rule. Notice that in his comments, and particularly also in his comments to Peter Mansbridge, Ban Ki-moon said, well, it's a global issue. Well, that's why global warming and climate change was chosen, because it transcended national boundaries, and that an international government they saw was the only one that could possibly deal with this issue, and that's what he's talking about.
Now, I've said this before on this show. I don't claim to be an expert in this area. There are certain aspects of political and social life, artistic life, I can speak with some authority. I don't know really how all this works, science and possible climate change and so on. But then I don't really think the Secretary General of the UN does either. Yet when people like you and others who are qualified speak on the issue, people comment, oh, they're not the experts. But you do know quite a bit. The head of the United Nations knows very little. Why should we listen to him in any way?
Well, we shouldn't, and particularly on the climate issue, because his source of information is a UN agency called the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change that was deliberately set up through the UN, particularly the World Meteorological Organization, to prove that human CO2 was causing global warming and climate change. And they did that by defining climate change, which they defined as looking at only those causes of climate change created by humans. So they then wrote computer models that prove that. That's what he's basing his push on. So he has to listen to his own agencies. It's much like the Prime Minister of Canada has to listen to what Environment Canada is telling him, and that's the problem. And by the way, Environment Canada was one of the founding groups of that IPCC, and of course that's part of what Ban Ki-moon's talking about. But if I could, Michael, just for a second, just to read, this is from the cover of a book written by a special impact team of reporters in the U.S., and it says, have our weather patterns run amok, or are they part of a natural and alarming timetable? From all over the world, frightening reports of unusual climatic occurrences. This vitally important document is compiled from expert testimony, scientific studies, government inquiry, and the growing body of data in the field. Its purpose is to inform the public of the true facts about a topic often clouded by action, superstition, and alarmist misrepresentation. That's on the cover of a book published in 1977 called The Weather Conspiracy, and what they were talking about was global cooling. And yet all of those comments, Ban Ki-moon could have said them yesterday about global warming. And so this is the difficulty that one has with all of this. And of course, to play Canada off against the other nations, he mentioned the deal between the U.S. and China. It is a totally meaningless deal. In fact, China are already saying, okay, we've signed the deal. You promised to pay us $100 billion, and we want our money. You're going to pay for your sins. That's what this is all about.
And Maybe I've been misled, but have we not committed to about $300 million to the UN Green Climate Fund?
Yes, we did, and Ban Ki-moon commended Canada for that. But for me, that's simply throwing money away. It's like Environment Canada spent $6.8 billion in 7 years, so much money out of their budget that they had to close weather stations and reduce services. It didn't change a single thing. And here's the other thing, Michael. Even if we adopted the full Kyoto Protocol, not in the modified version, but the original version, no scientist would be able to measure any difference in the level of CO2 in the atmosphere whatsoever. Right. So even if we did everything they said, it wouldn't change anything.
Yeah. Now, a general point here, not about climate change precisely, but about the two organizations that met here to tell us what to think and how to behave. On the one hand, we have the United Nations. We saw earlier the Secretary General shaking hands with Ahmadinejad, the former leader of Iran. Various theocracies and dictatorships and fascistic regimes are welcome at the UN. And then we have the CBC, which is probably at its most discredited point in its very history right now. Why should we care in any way what these two groups have to say about anything at all?
Well, the only reason is because, unfortunately, they have quite a bit of influence on the public and the public understanding of things. And they do it primarily by only selecting one side of the story they want to push. I mean, David Anderson did it when he was Minister of Natural Resources. And he said about Kyoto, we've consulted all the Canadian climatologists on this issue, and they all agree. Well, 8 of us, at our own expense, went to Ottawa and held a press conference and said, hey, here's 8 of us that don't agree, and we weren't consulted. But that's the problem, of course. These politicians can always go out and find so-called experts that will give them the information that they need to support their position, and then they select the ones that suit their purpose, and that's what's going on here.
Mm. Well, I'm sure it was compelling stuff for those who watched it. I didn't see it first time round. I only found out about it when I actually got here to Sun News. But as ever, the CBC doing a wonderful job. No cover-up or anything like that. How could there ever be? Hey, my friend, it's always a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks for all you do.
Email.